is going to have his work cut out for him, but it just comes down to the right play calls coming in and playing to his strengths. I would like to see him air it out a little bit more. That would be great to see. Even if he misses on some throws, I just want to see that it exists. That play call exists. So throwing a deep ball is in his arsenal, and then just let him run the RPOs and stuff and some of the runs he has. Because honestly, like the RPOs and runs, they really probably were the highlight from the Ole Miss game from what he did, in my opinion.
And that's where we kind of get back into, the play calling aspect of this, because I'm looking at his numbers from Saturday against Ole Miss, and he only had one attempt of greater than 20 yards. And again, he has the arm to throw the ball down the field. Now, there's a double-edged sword to that, because you do have to have the protection up front. And if the pocket is collapsing on you, you don't have time to sit back there and, let things develop down the field. So it's kind of a mix of both there. But, there's ways to scheme these kind of things, to give them more of an opportunity to flush the pocket, give them more time to let things develop downfield. It's just, it's a combination of everything. I'm not trying to point my finger at one thing in particular, whether it be Dow Loggins or Lenore Sellers or other guys on the offense. It's everybody not performing where you need them to perform at this point in time.
No, literally, it is everything. Like the receivers at this point in the year still aren't getting open. That is a huge concern. I don't know if that's so much about the defense that they're facing, but it might more so just be the players that they have. And the reality is they just can't create separation for whatever reason. The offensive line and the blocking in general hasn't been good enough. I know everyone wants to say it's not all the offensive line. Well, look, 22 sacks for 22 sacks, and they're going to end up falling on the offensive line. So that is what it is. The run game hasn't been great. Just a lot of everything. It's not all on Sellers. It's not all on the play call, like you said. It is really, truly a combination of everything.
The run game is an interesting thing here, because we knew going into the game on Saturday that Rocket Sanders was likely not at 100%. He was healthy enough to go, which he did, but you could see he just wasn't his self out there. Was able to break off a 12-yard run at one point, but for the most part, just kind of kept contained for the most of the game. We saw a lot more of Oscar Attaway on Saturday, and he had a couple moments here and there, but nothing necessarily spectacular. Again, that does go back to the offensive line to a degree, because they do have to open up the holes. But, my question is, we saw Rocket really kind of emerge in that game against LSU a couple weeks ago. If he's not fully healthy, is there enough confidence in this run game to be able to pick up that slack?
To me, that's a tough question to answer. I'd say no. Just before, we jumped to conclusions. I just wasn't impressed with the run game. And I know, Shane Beamer and the team are going to say, oh, the run game was great. I don't see it. 9 carries for 34 yards for Oscar Attaway. Look, he did what he could in the starting role for Rocket, and when you combine the numbers between him and Rocket, it's about 60 yards. But then again, I'm expecting more from these guys. And Attaway, I figured he's kind of more of like your goal line, short yardage type of back. Jawarn Howell had 4 carries for 19 yards. I'd like to see more of him. But I do think it's going to really take a big collective effort, and it's going to require to get more guys in there like you did in the Akron game, and that's against Akron. Like, it doesn't really mean all that much now. So I don't know if Rocket isn't Rocket. I don't know what you do, but, especially if you face a great defense. They have a brick wall up there and you can't run. I really don't know how you're going to win the passing game.
Well, and look, we know Rocket Sanders, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in the SEC as he was a couple years ago, and you can't expect one person like Oscar Attaway to be able to step in and just replace that production, because Rocket Sanders is a very special type of running back. But again, you got to find that combination to a degree of these other guys, again, kind of trying to supplement for whatever Rocket Sanders is not able to provide to you, assuming that he's not 100% healthy. And that's the thing, especially when it comes to those lower body injuries like he's dealt with in his career so far, they compound. And, yeah, he just got his ankle rolled up on against Akron. It wasn't anything too severe, but that's something that I'm worried is going to continue to persist throughout the season, because he already has leg injuries, knee problems. Now he has the ankle problem, and that's something that could very easily, get flared up again on the first play on Saturday. And then it's like, okay, what do you do for the rest of the game?
And that's the thing, man. It's like, I don't know what you do, because, and here's the thing with Saturday is, obviously, they have a lot of running backs. They're not going to be able to travel every single running back that maybe they want to, like a home game or something. It really doesn't make a difference. But they're going to be much more limited with how many guys they can have out there if, for whatever reason, Rocket just isn't good to go or he gets hurt, whatever the case might be. So I don't know how I feel about the other running backs. I was very high on them coming into the season, but honestly, like, I haven't seen anything in a big game that has stood out to me. Like, yeah, like Oscar Attaway, he's the guy. Like, and no disrespect, he's had his moments, but overall, it's kind of been like he hasn't like had the huge breakout 100-yard game or anything, and none of these guys really have. But I'm expecting more when you have a combination of 3 to 4 guys compared to one guy, and hypothetically, it should be able to equal out.
And let's give credit where it's due. Mississippi has the best run defense in the SEC, and you saw that on display once again on Saturday. And looking at the rest of South Carolina's schedule, this is just in the SEC purely. Oklahoma's number 4. They allow just over 105 yards per game, but for the most part, you really don't face too many like daunting run defenses. Texas A&M is 9th. You've already played LSU, they're 10th. Missouri's 11th. Alabama's 14th, believe it or not.
Jeez.
Like, you don't face a ton of, like, A&M's 9th, Vanderbilt's 8th. Like, you face basically most of the back half of the SEC when it comes to run defense, for the remainder of your conference schedule. So, like, can you take advantage of that? And if Rocket Sanders is not able to shoulder the same load of, 80% of the carries or whatever he had up to the point of getting hurt in the Akron game, do you have confidence that you can still make things happen with your running backs?
I think it just comes down to the fact that you have to get creative, right? You can't be running these halfback dives up the middle and stuff and expect to, get a big chunk of yards. I think you have to like be creative with what you do. What does that mean? Maybe you run a sweep. Maybe maybe run a reverse. I don't know. Maybe run RPOs. I really don't know what the solution is here because we just haven't seen it yet. Like, I haven't seen anything in the play calling from last week that made me feel like, oh, okay, so if Rocket's down, I can feel good about these guys. And look, you're facing a really good run defense in Ole Miss. But again, they're going to get worse as the year goes on, but it's still the SEC. And South Carolina hasn't done anything to really show me like, hey, like these guys can step in and really make an impact.
And this is something else that goes back to, again, the people that, put a lot of blame on Dow Loggins for this. It's using your running backs in the right way. Like Juju McDowell is somebody that you can use in space, that can catch the football, you can line up in the slot. And we've seen that a little bit, but maybe not as much as you probably should. And trying to run them between the tackles, that's just not going to work. Oscar Attaway is somebody else that has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield as he did at North Texas a season ago with a good deal of success there. And he's got 1 reception so far this year. So when he's on the field, you feel like there's other ways you could use him that they just haven't done yet.
And that's the problem, is that they have these skill sets that we know what they're good at. Like you said, Juju McDowell is much more the gadget type player. Why aren't we seeing more of that used to his strengths? Oscar Attaway, like you said, I feel like he's the more comparable to Rocket, more of like the physical back. So why not use that to your strengths more? I don't know what the solution is here, and I think it's not necessarily an issue, but Lenoir is your leading rusher week after week, it feels like, when Rocket is not out there. I really think that a lot of what South Carolina is going to do, if Rocket isn't Rocket, you're going to have to heavily rely on Sellers to get you, wins or even close in these ball games.
Yeah, certainly so. And we'll hear from Coach Beamer coming up today at 1 o'clock for his usual, Tuesday press conference, where I'm sure he'll continue to answer questions about what happened against Ole Miss and start to turn the attention to Alabama coming up this weekend, which for the second week in a row, you have a very angry, very talented team that is coming off of an upsetting loss to a team that they had no business losing a game to. So we'll see how that fares for South Carolina coming up on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. We'll start to take a look around the SEC now that we've had a chaotic weekend and see who the real contenders and pretenders in the conference are. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher along with you here on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. We touched a little bit yesterday on the chaotic weekend that was in the SEC. Of course, the upset of Vanderbilt over Alabama and Arkansas over Tennessee obviously shook up the top five in the latest AP poll, and obviously things looking pretty chaotic right now as far as the SEC standings. But now that we are roughly halfway through the season for most teams, I feel like this is a good time to establish our contenders and pretenders in the SEC. Who still has a shot at making not only Atlanta, but the college football playoff, and who is just kind of going to do their own thing for the rest of the season, really, now that we have a pretty good sample size. And we have to do this within the context of knowing that 2 losses probably still get you in the playoff. 3, I don't know.
Probably not in this day and age. There's going to be too many teams, I think, with 2 or 1 losses.
And it depends on who the losses are to.
Exactly.
Because if Alabama has 3 losses, one of them's to Vanderbilt, and
They're
then,
out.
I don't know, LSU and Auburn, yeah, if
they lose to Auburn, I don't care if it's a rivalry. They're out.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna get you in. But again, we don't know because it's a new playoff format, and it depends on what happens. And the Big 12, which seems like it's cannibalizing itself, the ACC seems like it's a 2-horse race at this point in time. But we'll see. The Big 10 obviously has a lot of contenders as well. I think it's very easy to say that, well, Texas being undefeated #1, very much still a contender, though we've not really seen them pushed too much at this point in the year. Like, they played the Michigan game, and I get it, Michigan's got a good defense, but that offense was nowhere near in the stratosphere of competing with Texas in that game.
No, that offense is not up to snuff. So look, they went to the Big House and won in convincing fashion. That's great. They struggled a little bit against Mississippi State, but they got the job done. You know, they're getting Oklahoma this week in the Red River rivalry game. I wonder who they're going to start at quarterback. Do you keep riding with Arch Manning, or do you go back to Quinn Ewers? I think they're going to go with Arch, and it's going to be a big test for them. But I think until we get to the Georgia game, I feel like Texas is in the best spot of any SEC team right now.
Speaking of the Georgia game, Georgia, of course, has the 1 loss to Alabama, though they nearly came back and won that game. They're a team that just keeps getting off to slow starts. Even against Auburn last week, and they scored a touchdown the opening drive, but still just could not put together consistent scoring drives in the first half. Eventually pulled away in the second half, as they've done through a lot of the games they've played so far this season. They've obviously got the talent. I said last week, I don't think they have as much at the wide receiver spot and tight end as they've had in years past, with guys like Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers being gone, but still an overall talented team. Defense, it's not the dominant defense we've seen in years past from Georgia, certainly, but still very talented, and one that has the ability to win any game that's going to be in.
They're going to be fine. Personally, I don't think they're going to win the SEC title this year. I think they're going to have to get there as an at-large bid. I don't see them. I could see them losing maybe 1 or 2 more games. I think they'll split with Tennessee and Texas. I just think that's the way it's going to go, because I think Texas is going to be the top seed in the SEC going into the tournament. But overall, Georgia, I think, is going to be fine. They're too good of a team, too well coached to not get there at least. How far they go, I have no idea, but this Bulldog team definitely has a different feel than the years past, and I do think personnel just has a big part of it.
Tennessee, of course, the loss to Arkansas on the road when they were at #4 this past weekend. Defense is good, and they showed that again on Saturday. Only gave up 19 points, and they really let Arkansas score on that last touchdown. So who knows if they would have ever gotten in the end zone if that hadn't happened. Nico is finally being tested, right? He had to go on the road for the first time against Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. Had some moments, but wasn't a superstar performance by any means, and looked a little shaky once again on the road at Arkansas this past weekend, which, again, he's a redshirt freshman. There's growing pains. There's a learning process. I get it. But there comes a point where you do, as the superstar quarterback people expect you to be, you'd have to take the game over. And we've not seen that, at least in a road setting, for him yet.
No, he definitely hasn't yet. And I think Tennessee, much like Georgia, is going to be fine because, look, they have the defense. They have the playmakers in that offense. And it really comes down to Nico trusting them and the coaching staff calling the right plays and doing what he's good at, because he's a fantastic quarterback. And I think just like, Lenore Sellers, because they're both, first-year stars in the SEC, there's going to be growing pains. he's going to get tested a lot more because he's going to face, Alabama, and I'm pretty sure Tennessee plays Georgia this year. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's going to be bigger tests out there, and I expect him to be better from it. I just think it was one of those one-off weeks where it was a weird week in college football in general, and a guy like him on the road at Arkansas, that last drive is going to teach him a lot about how to play quarterback in this league, and the fact that he needs to make a throw on that last down that he had when he ended up running it. So I think Tennessee will be fine, but there's still some games like, okay, the Alabama game essentially is a playoff game in some ways because both teams already have an ugly loss.
Well, mentioning Alabama, I know it feels like the sky is falling in Tuscaloosa right now,
apparently
but
so.
They still have the ability to win the games in front of them, make the playoff, make Atlanta, all those kind of things. But what I saw out of them this past weekend gives me concerns about their defense. Like, the signature of a Nick Saban coach team was just relentless, nasty defense, and for a lot of years, offense that was good enough to get the job done. And obviously, that stepped up in years past. This defense has not looked good these past 2 weeks. Again, they let Georgia back into the game in the second half, and they gave up over 400 yards of offense and 40 points to Vanderbilt. Again, I commend Vanderbilt for being a spirited team. They are not nearly as skilled as all the other teams in the SEC. That kind of thing shouldn't happen. That's the concern for me for Alabama. Like, Jalen Milroe is a perfectly capable quarterback. They got a lot of skill guys on offense, but if that defense can't slow anybody down, they're going to lose some more games.
Well, I think they have the perfect opportunity to start slowing down some offenses with South Carolina coming into town this weekend. That's no knock on South Carolina, but let's face the facts. South Carolina's offense has taken a major step back, and until proven otherwise, Alabama might be able to really get right in this type of game at home at Bryant-Denny. But, for the Tide, I think you got to work to your strengths. You have great playmakers in that offense. You have a Heisman-level quarterback. Your defense is what it is at this point right now. I think it'll be fine eventually, but you have to really rely on the fact that, hey, your offense is going to go out here and make some plays and occasionally get the stops necessary on defense to win games.
I'll loop these two in here because South Carolina's already seen both of them. Ole Miss and LSU, obviously still very much contenders. Only one loss, both, in the season so far. And LSU's obviously coming to Southern Cal in week number one, but very capable teams. Obviously, good quarterback play. Good guys on offense. Defense has much better for Ole Miss than it is for LSU. LSU's defense is certainly very good. I think this is where the cannibalization comes in. I don't know if these two teams are more. Ole Miss has a better chance of running the table for the rest of the year, though I don't have the highest confidence they're going to be able to do that because they still got to play like Georgia and stuff. I think LSU still has another loss or two in there, but where do they sit at this point in time, especially with the skill they have on this team, you still have to consider them a contender.
You definitely do have to consider them both contenders. But you know what? The good thing is we're going to learn a lot about them this weekend because what's going to happen this weekend? They're both playing each other in Baton Rouge.
That's right.
I personally think if I have to make an early prediction on this game, I think I included it in staff picks this week, so we'll find out either way. But I do think LSU is going to win this weekend. That's just my gut feeling right now. I don't think either of them are going to make the playoff, in my opinion. I think LSU, like you said, has a few more losses probably somewhere hidden on their schedule. I think Alabama can definitely beat them, although it's going to be under the lights probably in Baton Rouge. And Ole Miss, despite the fact that they came, back and picked up a big win at South Carolina, it wasn't like the most impressive Ole Miss type of win. There's still a lot of issues they have. And, they're going to have some stiff competition the rest of the year. So I wonder how they both do, but I don't think either of them are going to make the playoff, in my opinion.
Last one here I have for contender Texas A&M, a team that I don't think we really know what to make of them coming into this year. Obviously, you're making the transition from Jimbo Fisher over to, Mike Elko, and not a whole lot of guys left, so they still had some talent that was coming back, and Mike Elko's got those guys in good shape. Yeah, they lost week 1 to Notre Dame, and that's not a great Notre Dame team, but they've been playing very efficient football since then, highlighted by that dominant win they had against Missouri on Saturday.
I'll tell you what, normally I would say I don't think they're going to make the playoff, because it's year one of Mike Elko, and they're kind of similar to LSU and Ole Miss in the fact that we don't know a ton about what they're going to end up being. But the schedule, I think, really lines up in their favor. They go to Starkville in 2 weeks, so they'll be coming off a bye week, and they should look good in that game. LSU's at home. You go to South Carolina, and that can always be a toss-up, especially at night. But I do think that is the one game that could be a little bit of a question mark. I do think they're going to end up probably winning that game. New Mexico State, you go to Auburn, and then Texas at home in the Lone Star Showdown. I think A&M with one loss right now can really deal with one more loss on the schedule and run the table and get in. That's just how I feel about it. But I feel like it might be a little bit of a long shot because we just don't know a ton about what this team ultimately will be.
That's where we sit a little over a month into the season with 7 contenders still left in the SEC by what we've seen so far. We'll come back. We'll hit our NFL top 5, bottom 5 as your Tuesday rolls on the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry here on the game. All right.
Hey, wanted to tell you about our new show sponsor, Pete Alewine Pool and Spa. They're an award-winning swimming pool builder that's been in the business for 25 years with more than 40 years of pool construction experience. They service the entire Midlands area in Columbia, Lexington, wherever you're looking for, whether you're looking for weekly cleaning maintenance or chlorine to salt conversion with services like safety cover installs and safety fence installs. You can check out all of their offerings at their showroom in Lexington and talk to their experts about everything you might need. Their retail store is located at 5541 Sunset Boulevard. Again, that's 5541 Sunset Boulevard. And you can also check them out online at PeteAlewinePools.com. Want to appreciate Pete Alewine's Pools and Spa for being a sponsor on 107.5 The Game.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour. Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. A lot of things to get to here. Dave has informed me that I did forget the most important thing when we start the show. That, of course, is our 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up. Better late than never. It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. We got our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up out of the way. Also, real quick, our heavy lifting segment brought to you by our friends over at TEC Equipment Rentals. I got to give it to our guy, Ashton Genty of Boise State. 13 carries, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns, including a 75-yard touchdown in his first touch of the game. He has now eclipsed 1,000 yards and has 16 touchdowns in 5 games played so far this season.
Heisman. It's easy. It's all there's needed to be said here. He is the Heisman frontrunner right now, and until proven otherwise, until he regresses, Heisman.
He's going to get an invite to New York.
Has to.
If he continues to play at this high clip, where, again, he's averaging over 100
yards.
Really, he might be averaging about 200 yards a game. That's insane. And he's done it against high-level competition, like Oregon ran for $192 and 3 touchdowns as well. So it's not just doing this against lesser opponents, also against Washington State a couple weeks ago as well. So he's doing this against decent to quality teams. If he can continue to play at this clip, I think he gets invited to the Heisman Trophy in New York.
He needs to.
Winning as a running back is so hard, though. It's going to be...
But he's having such a special year. And I don't care if he's a group of 5 running back, man. It's Boise State we're talking about. Enough with this bias towards all these big programs and stuff, and this being a quarterback award. Give it to, this feels like the little guy award. Come on, man. Give it to them.
If Boise can continue to win, if they can win the Mountain West and make it into the playoff,
it becomes an easier discussion.
That helps his case. I will say that much.
And he'll have a conference championship game to go off of as well, potentially.
That is true.
So, look, as long as he doesn't fall off the face of the earth this week or any week this year, I think he's going to get in, and I think he is the front runner clear right now.
Listen, I just think he's fun to watch.
He's awesome, man. He's a great player, and the fact that he's stayed at Boise State this entire time and not left is really remarkable.
Time to get to our NFL top 5, bottom 5s we do on Tuesdays each and every week, coming off of another NFL weekend. My top 5 has not changed a whole lot, just kind of moved some teams around. Start off, Minnesota's my number 1. They're still undefeated. Defense stepped up on Sunday, 3 interceptions of Aaron Rodgers, and they are 3rd in explosive plays in the NFL so far this season. Sam Darnold did begin to show a little bit of cracks, but they still found a way to win despite the fact he did not have his best game on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And look, the Vikings for me, I'll get to them here in a second, but they're not my number 1. My number 1 is the only other undefeated team left in the NFL. That is the Kansas City Chiefs. And look, their wins haven't been pretty this year by any means, but they did beat the Saints last night on Monday Night Football, and I just think there's something about Pat Mahomes this year. Look, that team's coming for a 3rd straight championship potentially. You're getting, Travis Kelce a lot more involved in this offense. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster had a great game last night. Mahomes threw for 331 yards. That's a really good team right there. Kareem Hunt had a big night, 102 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Look, they might be down a few pieces. No more Rashee Rice and some other guys, but I do think despite all the issues that they have, they're still 5-0, and they are the team to beat in the NFL right now.
Kansas City's my number 2, and I agree with you on all those things. They have a red zone problem, which was an issue last night with just not being able to consistently get touchdowns as they've done all season long, and that would have been more of a blowout of a game if they'd been able to convert some of those red zone opportunities into scores. But like you said, despite the fact they're not playing their best football, they're still winning. The defense is still really, really good. They're going to click into gear at some point, and then they're going to be even more dangerous, which is a scary thought for the rest of the league.
It really is, to be honest, man. And they are no matter how bad you want them to lose, they just find ways to win. It's crazy. Anytime that you count them out, which is a mistake that I've learned, They are so good, and they work really well under pressure. For me, number 2, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, flip-flop of what you had. I think despite Sam Darnold not playing good and really coming back down to earth, I still think this is a very good football team. Their defense, like you said, really stepped up. Stephon Gilmore had that awesome pick at the end of the game on Aaron Rodgers, and you had 3 picks against him. That's the important thing, is that, you faced Aaron for a long time when he was with Green Bay, but the fact that you got him to throw 3 interceptions, especially that one down there at the end, that's huge. Jay Jettas and Jordan Addison, those are 2 really good players. Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones. Sam Darnold has the weapons in this offense. Kevin O'Connell's doing a great job. But I do think the Vikings at some point might slow down a little bit. But for right now, they're still undefeated and deserve to be in that number 2 spot.
My number 3, Baltimore, coming off of their overtime win over Cincinnati. Again, they've got the best offense in the league. They finally won a tight back and forth kind of game because they've lost a couple of those so far this season. Lamar looked like MVP once again on Sunday with the 4 touchdowns that he threw, and obviously able to move that offense along really well. And what more can you say about Derrick Henry? Dude's a monster. Nearly won the game at overtime with that long run that ended up setting up the Justin Tucker field goal. But this team is just elite all the way around.
They are very dangerous, and I don't have them in my top 5, and I know that's a little surprising. I was kind of going back and forth on it, but there's just a lot of good teams that still have only 1 loss right now in the NFL. But I will say, honorable mention for me would have to be the Ravens. They just have been very, very good these last few weeks, ever since they got off to that kind of slow start. For me, number 3, I got to go with the Washington Commanders. They have been the best team in the NFC East so far. I do think they're going to ultimately keep it up and win this division, even though Philly is right on their tails and the Cowboys and stuff. So there's a long way to go. But I will say they really did beat the Browns in convincing fashion the other day. And Jaden Daniels, I've continued to be very impressed with him. Not his best game, but again, when you're able to win with this kind of player, the things that he can do as a playmaker in general, it's really scary. And speaking of scary Terry McLaurin had 112 yards receiving. He's so good in this offense, and they've got the weapons. He got the defense. I think right now they are the best team in that NFC East division.
They're my number 4. Like you said, explosive offense. Jaden Daniels looks like he is on his way to winning Rookie of the Year if he continues to play this well. And this is exciting. They have the Ravens this upcoming weekend, which will be fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. And number 4 for me, I didn't know if I wanted to put them in here. I probably would have put the Ravens in here, but I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. Okay. And look, they looked pretty dang good against the Bills the other day. They had the big lead, and then kind of the second half kind of fell apart a little bit and got a little lucky at the end there with the Bills getting in their own way and costing themselves the game. But when it came down to it, I really was impressed with C.J. Stroud. Nico Collins was very good before he got hurt. Stephon Diggs in his quote-unquote revenge game, even though he wanted out of Buffalo, so I don't know what the deal is there. But I'm impressed with this Texans team. They ran the ball pretty well against the Bills' run defense, and I mean, look, they're 4-1 right now in kind of a softer division. But again, we knew coming into this year that this team probably wasn't a fluke, and they've shown it so far at 4-1.
Last one for me, number 5 in the NFL top 5, bottom 5. Detroit, they're on a bye this week, so the opinion hasn't really changed on them. Obviously, Hutchinson was the sack leader in the NFL a week ago. Jared Goff had his perfect performance on Monday night the other day against Seattle, and they have a great combination in the backfield with Gibbs and Montgomery, and they're a team that once again looks like well on their way to maybe winning the NFC North.
Yeah, great minds think alike, because I have the Detroit Lions at number 5 for me as well. They have been very impressive so far this year. And look, I think it kind of gets overshadowed a little bit by the fact that the Vikings are 5-0 on the year. The Packers have been playing well and stuff. But I think the Lions, they're ultimately going to win the division this year. It just feels right. And they have gotten off to a great start this year. Again, coming off the bye week. But I have been impressed with Jared Goff. He has really, have the Lions won that Matt Stafford trade outside of the fact that the Lions have the Rams have the Super Bowl.
Rams have the Super Bowl, so that's hard to argue.
But in terms of playing, I think Jared Goff has been a better player than Matt Stafford in some cases. I don't know.
Certainly this year, because the Rams are struggling a little bit. It's an interesting debate to really dive into the numbers on that a little bit, but they definitely feel good about what they have with Jared Goff.
Yeah, and they've been very good this year again. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sam Laporta, I'm waiting for to really take that big step forward this year after having such a great year last year. But overall, they have a great team, and come off the bye week, I expect them to keep it rolling.
That's the NFL Top 5 with the bottom 5 coming up next to wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. He's Jack Felcher. I'm Tyler Head here on your Tuesday on the Game. Real quick, want to remind you once again, coming up, Coach Beamer at 1 o'clock for his usual Tuesday press conference, which we'll cover for you here on the halftime show on the Game. Again, we'll wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point here on the Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. We'll hit our NFL bottom five here in just a second, but a reminder, the game is teaming up with community partners, launching a Hurricane Helene relief effort for families in Asheville, Greenville, and the Spartanburg, South Carolina areas. You can join us in supporting families impacted by the recent disaster with the collection drive that is starting today, going through Thursday of this week. Please bring non-perishable items such as canned food, bottled water, diapers, wipes, pet food, toiletry, and feminine hygiene products to the following locations, including today, where Terry will be broadcasting live from Northside Baptist Church on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington from 9 until 2, then again from 4 until 6:30 p.m. Tomorrow, be out at 12 Springs Community Church, Sunset, Lexington from 9 until 6. Wednesday, Brooklyn Northeast Church in Columbia on Summit Parkway from 9 until 6. Then Thursday, once again, Terry will be out there at Brooklyn Baptist Church on Sunset Boulevard from 9 until 6. That is in West Columbia. So again, any help will be appreciated for the Hurricane Helene relief effort. Quickly here, we're running through our NFL bottom five. Making their first appearance in my bottom five at number 28 is the Cleveland Browns. They're on a 3-game losing streak, have not scored more than 18 points all season. Deshaun Watson looks terrible, and they have the worst offense in terms of yards per game so far this season.
Yeah, the Browns have been very, very bad this year. But for me, coming off a bye week, I'm going with the Tennessee Titans. I just have not been impressed with Will Levis really at all this year. I never thought he was truly the answer for the Titans. And look, they had Malik Willis, and Malik Willis has looked pretty good for the Packers in some relief role when Jordan Love was out. But yeah, for the Titans, I know they're coming off a win, but again, Will Levis has made some really stupid mistakes throwing the football, and the whole Mayo shtick is getting old. So I'm not very high on the Titans, and I don't expect this to be a good year for them.
My number 29, Jacksonville. They were actually 32 for me last week. They finally won a game. Congratulations to them. And Trevor Lawrence, for the first time this season, finally looked like the quarterback they paid a ton of money in the offseason to be. That's only one win, so I'm not going to get too excited about it, but they at least jumped up 3 spots in my bottom 5.
Hey, I'm glad the Jags finally got the win, because I was hearing people on the radio saying, like, I think this is going to be the week the Jags finally get the win, and I didn't believe it, but of course they did. But for me, I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns, and they have been super, super underwhelming this year. The defense is not good. It's just a real issue for them. Deshaun Watson, as we know, is making so much money, and he's been probably the worst quarterback in the NFL this year. I don't like the way they're playing at all. They just have a lot of issues, and I don't think it's going to get any better. Deshaun, in reality, should be getting benched right now, but I think because ownership paid him a lot of money, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So as long as he's the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, they're going to continue to stink.
My 30 quickly here, New England, they lost to a kind of hapless Miami team without Tua. O-line is surrendering the most pressures in the league, and they had 12 penalties versus the Dolphins. Very undisciplined team right now in Gerard Mayo's first year as the head coach.
Yeah, the Patriots are my team there as well, and I have just not been impressed with this team. I thought defensively, I think they're a pretty good defensive team, but offense, they stink. It's the way to put it. Jacoby Brissett hasn't been great, but again, I think it's better to put him out there than Drake May, because the last thing you want is to destroy a rookie quarterback's confidence, and that's what would be happening this year. So let Drake May learn, let him get his reps eventually, occasionally, but for right now, I would stick with Brissett and just let things roll out, because you need the number 1 pick probably.
Final 2 here really quickly. You already said Tennessee was in your list. I got them at number 31, again, coming off a bye week. The last time we saw them, they beat, again, kind of a hapless Dolphins team without Tua. The quarterback situation not good for Levis. He got injured. Mason Rudolph came in and made the offense better. So maybe there's something there. But the defense is okay to a degree, but the offense just isn't there for that team. And then lastly for me, Carolina Panthers, who had climbed to, I think, 31 for me last week, got dominated by the Chicago Bears this past weekend as they looked kind of returning back to form, if nothing else.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars in the second to last spot. They have the talent, but it just hasn't come together this year. I thought they played a lot better against the Colts and obviously got the game-winning field goal. The issue for me, though, is this was a game that the Jags were cruising along in, and then you get up 24 fourth-quarter points. That's a real issue, but you still got the win. And now you're the last team to pick up a win this season. And then the last spot, the Carolina Panthers. They had been looking better the last few weeks, but against the Bears with the number 1 pick out there that you had at quarterback and Caleb Williams, he looked very good on Saturday and just annihilated the Panthers. And DJ Moore in this revenge game played very well. So
kind of Caleb Williams coming out party.
Yeah, honestly, that kind of woke up the Bears a little bit. So the Panthers are in that last spot, and they are just a mess right now. And a lot of issues there, right a few hours from us here, Sal.
Definitely so. As what we got 5 weeks of the NFL season so far in the books, and have next week getting set to start coming up here on Thursday night. We'll hit our next NFL Top 5 Bottom 5 coming up next Tuesday. We'll turn our attention to Alabama. Coming up tomorrow, we'll hear from Coach Beamer today at 1 o'clock and see what he has to say. So that's the extra point. Coming up next is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling with Jordan Carrion from Gamecock Baseball sitting down with Chris. That's coming up next on your Tuesday here on The Game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time. You always need to keep an eye on what's going on around your home, because if you start to notice things that are a little bit odd, you need to get those things checked out, like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking a little bit, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. These could all be signs of serious foundation issues with your home, and that's where our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyandfixa.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate what's going on with it and get your home's foundation fixed up so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyandfixa.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist.
And upgrading your home theater system if you want to make your entertainment room the place to be, whether it's during this college football season, pro football season. Football, as I've been saying, is going to be on your television, your televisions, your device, your tablets, your phone, everywhere for the next, 40 or 50 days. So if you want an upgrade, hit up our guys at Integrated Media, Michael and Nathan. Go check out some examples of the past work that they've done. They've been out to my home. They've been out to Wes's home. Honestly, don't know if they have any photos of what they've done at our houses on Integrated Media Columbia on Instagram and Facebook if you want to go check it out. But they do have certainly some examples of some awesome stuff they've done in the past. You don't have to use the big box stores. They can source the equipment for you. They can install it for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com to learn more or give them a call. 803-948-8327, Integrated Media.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday. Appreciate Jordan Carry-On taking a little bit of his time for the interview earlier on in the hour. Of course, hope to see him on the diamond this spring as the NCAA did not allow him eligibility this past year to get out there. So hopefully that's all alleviated by the time the spring rolls around. We obviously talk a lot about NIL and things like that in this hour because, you know, the athletes do get the opportunity to do these interviews thanks to our partnership with the Gamecock Club and those NIL opportunities. news coming out earlier on this morning from Ross Dellinger, who's always on top of the latest going on in NIL and, the restructuring of college football, about the potential plans for this Super League, quote unquote, that has been tossed around quite a bit over the past couple of years that might be getting closer and closer to happening.
Yeah, we got a couple of big things going on. Well, more than a couple, things, right, that are percolating behind the scenes. One of them is that, and I don't even know if we'll get into this part, Tyler, but it just kind of sprung to mind because Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, who you referenced, has been writing on this as well. The House case has a preliminary settlement. That doesn't mean it's done. In fact, there's still not a year, but, several months remaining until this thing could be done. And obviously that is something that I think everybody in college athletics has been waiting on because it would usher in revenue sharing and new roster limits and scholarship changes, all sorts of stuff. So not done yet, but getting close. But the other thing, or I should say one of the other things that has been going on behind the scenes is this new Super League concept. And Project Rudy.
Which, what an ironic name.
I know.
To name this after Rudy Rudiger.
Because it would definitely, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's anti-walk-on, but when you think of Rudy, you think of that story, and this would certainly not be an underdog story because it would give more power to.
Rudy joined the Notre Dame football team because of his love and passion for Notre Dame football and the love of the game. He was not getting NIL. He was not. He got on the field for 2 plays in his career, famously, and they made a movie about it. Like this Super League project being named Rudy is very funny in hindsight.
Well, and our guy who we've had on the program here before, Matt Brown, Extra Points, he said on X this morning, he said there's something deeply funny about institutional investors naming their college football plan after Rudy Rudiger, a man who was later charged with securities fraud from a pump and dump scheme.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
Okay.
So
Rudy's not such a good guy after all.
Well, he might have been misunderstood.
What people always say, he was offsides, right?
Yeah, that's right. But so let's get to the actual what is this thing? Like, there have been plans that have been obviously the House case, right? Like that is a plan.
This term Super League is something we've tossed out so many times over the past couple of years, really since NIL became a thing. Because, at some point, all these big leaguers are going to get together and they're going to try and separate themselves from everybody else so they can have more of the money and can have more control and all that kind of stuff. But we've never really had a full structure presented on how exactly that would work.
There have been some that are being proposed, that are being kicked around. We know that the SEC and the Big Ten are meeting this week for a summit of sorts. There have been, there's been a model that was made public last week, and Ross Dellinger in his writing, go check out the piece on Yahoo Sports if you haven't. It's called, it's a long headline, but basically if you look up Ross Dellinger Super League, I'm sure will find it on the Google machine. But basically this model is a little bit more simple, and it would take the 4 power conferences, so, y'all know who those are, a 70-team structure, and then Dellinger writes that it would preserve, obviously, those 4 power conferences. It would expand the postseason. It would overhaul scheduling, tier revenue distribution, and here is the, maybe the most critical part, most interesting part. It would give as much as $9 billion of private capital into the system. So there's a venture capital firm out in L.A. and New York, Smash Capital, and they have been working on this. Interestingly, Tyler, there have been ADs at 25 Power 4 programs that have seen this presentation either in Zoom, on a phone call, or even in person. And the SEC, Big 12, and ACC commissioners have also seen this one. Now, Dan Radakovich, former Clemson AD, who's now at Miami, so they would fall into that Power 4 conference, he said, of all the ideas I've seen, this one makes the most sense.
There's a lot of depth to it. And obviously the money is the biggest thing at the end of the day here, which is the whole reason for a Super League is to try and, get the most, revenue as possible. And you mentioned the different tiers this would be broken up into, and this is the way that Ross Dellinger breaks it down. It says Tier 1 would be the top 16 schools earning per school revenue projections from $130 million in year 4, escalating to $250 million in year 12, which is double what the SEC and the Big Ten have at their current distribution rates. The next 22 schools would earn revenue between $60 and $110 million, which is similar to the SEC and the Big Ten current rates. And then Tier 3, the last 32 schools earn projections of $30 to $60 million, which is similar to what you get in the Big 12 and the ACC. So there is reward for being a good program, and there's penalty for being, I'm going to say penalty, you're still making tens of millions of dollars, penalty for not being as good. So it's not going to suddenly put everybody on this even playing field necessarily. You're still going to have top programs be top programs, but there's more of a reward for being that now, it seems like, if this comes to fruition.
Yeah, a lot of money into this thing. The folks that are architecting this thing, is that a word, architecting? Sure, that's a word. They've got, venture capital experience. A couple of them have worked on the innovation side and the COO side of Disney, right? One unnamed high-level SEC school administrator said that the idea is brilliant, but basically said you're going to have to convince Greg Sankey, who, of course, the SEC commissioner, and Tony Petitti, who is the Big Ten commissioner. Those are the we got the Power Four, right? But the two, the SEC and the Big Ten, those are clearly right now the most powerful and are poised to remain the most powerful. So I don't think anything's going to move until they do.
If this happened, it would keep FBS football as close to what we know it is now than what we kind of feared was going to happen, where the SEC and the Big Ten just go off and do their own thing, and they become a 35-ish team Super League, kind of the NFL light at that point in time. So this would at least incorporate the Big 12, the ACC, as well as Notre Dame, because, of course, they're a power institution as well, despite not having a conference. But something interesting in here, it's built on two simple concepts to increase revenue from the TV network and corporate sponsors. Arranging more games between power conference programs by eliminating all games against Group of 5 and FCS opponents, expanding playoffs, putting blue bloods against each other more often than not, and then consolidating media rights of the 70 schools under one agreement instead of the current structure of 5 different packages, which that includes what Notre Dame has with NBC, which that is very much in line with the NFL, who has one media rights deal that encompasses the entire league.
Very interesting. The media rights part makes total sense for an arrangement like this. So I don't really have a lot of comment on that, but the part about, you are really, really leaning into the haves and the have-nots here. Now it's not like people generally, when you think of haves and have-nots, you're thinking of like 15 or 20 schools or 5 schools, like a smaller, it's 70, right?
Yeah.
But you're really putting those 70 schools in a silo. Hey,
essentially,
you guys are going to play each other. It's not the NFL playing what's the name of the USFL or whatever, UFL, whatever we're calling it now. That's kind of what you have. This would be a much expanded NFL. 70 teams.
Essentially, yes. For the first time in college football history, you are finally putting up a wall between what we know as Power 4 and Group of 5 and FCS, because it's always been intermingled. South Carolina can play the Citadel, and they play Wofford and teams like that. They played Akron, they played Old Dominion, and we call those pay games, because what you're doing is you're paying those teams to come in here so you can beat up on them, hypothetically, or hopefully you do that. That's the goal, obviously, to get yourself right, get some more experience for guys that are younger, and allow those programs to get a big check out of it to fund the equestrian team and buy new saddles, like Joe Moorhead said the other week with Akron. So this would be shutting that down. We're saying, no, you're only going to play teams within this 70-team structure. So the easier games on your schedule, instead of it being an FCS team, okay, you got Purdue out of the Big Ten. They're one of the worst teams in all of the 70-team structure, and you should be able to beat upon them and hopefully get some of your backups in. But it will truly elevate the strength of schedule for everyone across the board.
Yeah, it does. Here's a question that I have about it that I think we generally know this is true, but we don't know what it means. And one Big Ten school administrator mentioned this to Dellinger in the story, again, anonymously. It helps with an immediate issue, which is cash, is what he doesn't say that, but that's obviously the issue, to save Olympic sports at schools.
Yep.
Right. And cash infusions, this model causes for lots of revenue increases. But he did note, and this is a fair point, private equity, that means you want a high rate of return and a high level of control. So the rate of return, you can kind of foresee. What does the high level of control mean? We don't really know that. You're a little bit more at the mercy of private equity. Is that a bad thing? I don't even know, but it is a question of what that would look like.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. And again, there's no guarantee this is going to happen. It's definitely, again, the most structured proposal that we've seen come to the board so far. And like you said, the leaders of the SEC and the Big Ten are meeting this week in Nashville, and this certainly is going to be something that's going to be a important conversation this week.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the other group that's already, was it college sports tomorrow or something? Yes. And that was a much different proposal because it was, I think, 136 schools, football only. On the surface, this one makes more sense to me. On the surface, it seems like this one has a little bit more traction given the people that are involved, the plan they've laid out, some of the things that are being said publicly and behind the scenes, even if people aren't going on record. Obviously, Dan Radakovich went on record. Some others are choosing not to use their name, but seem to like this plan. So, eventually this is the direction we're going. We're going to land on a model probably similar to this. It's just which one and, what does it all mean?
Keep your eye out on the updates on this. Again, Ross Dellinger, a great follow from Yahoo Sports, who stays on top of all these things, and we'll see what comes from the meeting between the SEC and the Big Ten leaders up in Nashville this week. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Club Hour. We didn't get a chance to dive into this yesterday on the Central Takeover Hour, but a lot happened in the SEC this past weekend. There's one fan base that is very, very upset. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Crans Heating and Cooling. Tyler and Chris along with you here on The Game. Welcome back in Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler and Chris along with you here on this Tuesday. Reminder, the game is teaming up with community partners for Hurricane Helene relief efforts in Asheville, Greenville, and the Spartanburg, South Carolina areas. You can join us in supporting families impacted by the recent disaster by bringing non-perishable items to the collection drive today through Thursday. Those items include canned food, bottled water, diapers, wipes, pet food, toiletry, and feminine hygiene products. Locations today going to be out at Northside Baptist Church at 4347 Sunset Boulevard in Lexington from 9 until 2, then again from 4 until 6:30. Tomorrow at 12 Springs Community Church, also on Sunset in Lexington from 9 until 6, as well as Brooklyn Northeast Church on Summit Parkway in Columbia from 9 until 6, and then Thursday, once again, at Brooklyn Baptist Church on Sunset Boulevard from 9 until 6. That is in West Columbia. Terry will be out there today at Northside Baptist in Lexington, as well as Brooklyn Baptist coming up on Thursday, helping with those collections. So again, any help that you can give for the relief efforts is certainly appreciated. It was a wild weekend of college football. A lot of upsets, including, of course, Vanderbilt taking down #1 Alabama in Nashville. I want to play this clip for you because I found it hilarious when Preston sent it to me last night, but it underlines a bigger conversation about what's happening in Tuscaloosa, and something that is interesting considering the fact that South Carolina is coming to town this weekend. Cut number 8 here, Dave. This is Luke Robinson of the Locked On Bama podcast talking about, of all things, Kalen DeBoer's shirt choice on Saturday.
Is the most embarrassing loss in Alabama history. I don't even know where to start. I do know where to start. You know where I'm going to start? What person on this planet told Kalen DeBoer, you know what would be a good-looking shirt? That one you got on. What was that? Popping out with some schmedium crap that looked like it was a hand-me-down from Mike Bryce. What is he doing? I mean, look, it's one thing to have your team unprepared. Can you at least put on a shirt that makes you look like, hey, I got an idea what's going on? That shirt is the ugliest shirt I've ever seen. And I've seen the Seinfeld episode where the moths eat all of George Costanza's father's beachwear. It's the worst shirt I've ever seen. Don't ever wear it again. That's something you get from Fanatics when you spend $100. You get it for free. Take that thing off.
So for those that didn't see, Kalen DeBoer is just wearing a very generic Alabama Nike t-shirt. It's untucked, it just looks like something he threw on before he ran out there on the field. And again, that's a very funny thing to listen to, but it kind of underlines what being the head coach at Alabama is all about. Because when you're winning, you can do whatever you want.
Wear no shirt.
Exactly. Well, you're beating Wisconsin by 32 points. You're holding off a #2 Georgia. Everything's great. You can dress however you want. You can let your players, be on podcast and Instagram Live from the locker room. That's all cool. But the second you start losing, everything comes under fire. Well, what do you mean you're wearing a T-shirt? Nick Saban wore a polo on the sidelines every single week. What do you mean you're letting your players have fun? No, you should be, tearing into their butt at every single practice. And I don't know if you got to listen to his presser yesterday or not, but listening to him talk yesterday, there was a timidness in his voice. He did not command the room the way he has in press conferences past, and certainly doesn't do it the same way that Nick Saban has. I think he's finally feeling the blunt of what it means to be Alabama's head coach.
Well, you saw that didn't he have on a polo?
He had on a polo yesterday as well.
Everybody said that they cyberbullied him.
They cyberbullied him into wearing a more acceptable shirt.
Yeah, the funny thing about what that guy said on that clip is I just couldn't stop thinking about, I can't even remember the Seinfeld episode that he referenced, but, the puffy shirt episode on Seinfeld,
legendary.
That shirt is way worse. The puffy shirt is worse than the Alabama T-shirt. But you're right, Tyler. And look, at Alabama, take, whatever the pressure is on a coach and multiply it times, approximately a zillion. But we see this here. If a team loses a game, if a coach loses a game in a sport, one of the major sports, right? And especially if there's a big game loss or an unexpected loss, painful loss, or a streak especially, then you start seeing the hyper-analysis of he's not yelling enough. He's yelling too much. He's not wearing the right shirt. He is wearing the right shirt. He needs to do this type of thing. What he's saying in the press conference, he's not taking responsibility, even if he is. He's not. He says the same things every week. Like, again, when you win, people don't really care about that type of stuff. Ultimately, what you say in a press conference, it may reflect some things going on with your program, but it's not really integral to winning or losing a football game. You know, Lane Kiffin, recent example because he coaches Ole Miss. I mean, he goes up there sometimes and has, some of the most boring press conferences you'll ever see, which is weird to say because Lane Kiffin is on social media. He's entertaining. The other night, he's doing things like watching the Vandy-Bama game during the press conference. But his pressers a lot of times are extremely bland and boring. He still wins a good bit.
Yeah.
Saban's a lot of times very boring. Sometimes you would get an infamous rant with the Coke bottle. Not always, right? It's just about winning. And so, yeah, DeBoer, I mean, he's lost, this one game? It was a very bad loss.
Oh, it's
but
one
now
of the worst in recent memory.
The stories are being written, the things are being said, and you're right. He's seeing what it's like. Be under that microscope.
Poor shirt choice. He's got to come out in a suit and tie on Saturday, right?
Well, yeah, and you know where this is going next, Tyler. Now the DC, a lot of the players, they're saying, y'all are going to see what it's really about this week. So now Gamecock fans are like, great. Couldn't they have just won that game and coasted in?
Why is Kane Womack wearing that stupid visor? Who told him that looked good? It's just beginning, and unfortunately, South Carolina gets a very angry Alabama this upcoming weekend, which we'll dive into plenty as the week rolls along. That'll do it for the Gamecock Club Hour. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. This hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling here on the Game. I do not know.
All right, we'll tell you about another one of our outstanding partners here on the game. It's our friends over at Classic Roofing, Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, residents and families right here in the Midlands, and they can help you with any of your residential or commercial roofing needs. 803-590-7870 or classicroofingsc.com, a GAF certified roofer. Only about 7% nationwide are in that category. And so they can help you take care of your roof by roof installations, roof inspections, roof replacements, roof repairs. They specialize in all of that stuff. Look and visualize your new roof online with GAF's virtual design tool through Classic Roofing, classicroofingsc.com. Solutions and no nonsense from Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer over at Classic Roofing. No dishonesty, no gimmicks, no headaches, no problems. ClassicRoofingSC.com or 803-590-7870.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. Obviously, guys, we spent a lot of time talking about what happened yesterday with South Carolina losing to Ole Miss on Saturday. Didn't get a chance to unpack everything from that game, but obviously a underwhelming result, losing by 24, especially, coming off a bye week where you had more time to prepare than Ole Miss did and just weren't able to really match them on anything on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is further evidence, like, the way college football is right now, the way this conference is right now. If you show up and have a bunch of unforced errors, like, you are going to get humbled. And, I mean, that just is what it is. And so, I've seen, especially people who aren't aware of the South Carolina fan experience, being like, well, wait, how did South Carolina blow out Kentucky? Then Kentucky beat Ole Miss, and then Ole Miss blow out South Carolina. Well, for one, that's sports. Every game does stand on its own merit. Excuse me, and so stuff like this happens. But look back, look at how well South Carolina played against Kentucky. Look how pretty much every major moment in that game went their way. Then look at I hate to keep going back to it, but look at all the unforced errors by South Carolina. We talked about it just in terms of at the beginning of the game for South Carolina, like obviously the missed fake punt. You look at the turnover, but you can even go throughout the course of the entire game. So that obviously those two situations led to two of Ole Miss's scores. The situation where South Carolina took the holding, that led to points for Ole Miss. And then the drive where South Carolina has, of course, the now viral Dylan Stewart celebration. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all. You had that, you had a PI, and you had an offside all on the same drive for South Carolina defensively, and that led to a field goal from Ole Miss. So, obviously, that's not to say, hey, if those things don't happen, Ole Miss just wasn't going to score in those possessions. That's not what I'm saying. But most of Ole Miss's scoring on Saturday came after you shoot yourself in the foot. So I think that's something, it just illustrates if you play a good team and you just don't play well, then you're going to get humbled. And that's what happened on Saturday. And, I think we've seen South Carolina be on both sides of that. Kentucky probably looks back at that game and says, hey, we didn't play well in that game, and South Carolina humbled us.
Yeah.
And I did finally make it through a full rewatch of the game, and I mean, I just can't get over the fact of when you're down 14-0 and it's stuff it's self-inflicted. Like, the game was not over, but it just felt so different than if you're just in the flow of a back-and-forth game. And then when Ole Miss scores before the half, to me, that's when you're just like from a coaching standpoint, like from a football standpoint, if you're in the building, if you're on the sideline, you're still fighting. You're still saying, hey, we have a shot. We can come back. We can come back. But from a realistic standpoint, sitting there watching it, knowing what we know about how Carolina struggled to move the football, it stinks for the fans, too, to put all their energy, tailgating, financial support, all that, build their entire weekend around the game, and then to sit there for the final three quarters, essentially, and feel like they're just sitting through an exercise versus...
kind of like treading water.
Yeah, but it's like sitting there almost like they have to at that point, as opposed to being excited. And you look forward to these opportunities all year long, and then you're just sitting there like, this is not fun.
Well, that's why a lot of people left before halftime, and a lot of them didn't return after halftime, because you knew being down 21 points, they're most likely not going to come back in this game. Like, nothing in that first half told you there was any shot of that happening. You hate to give up on your team that early in the game, but I understand why people would.
Yeah, I can't. We sometimes make fun of the just outlandish reactions to things, but I can't get upset for anyone leaving a game early, the way that one felt. And, it is what it is. When you put that much, I mean, that stadium was packed. Like, it was set to be another great atmosphere. And you just go back to, hey, while trying to, honestly, I believe the decision to fake the punt, Beamer's heart was in the right spot. Like, the whole point of it was to try to stay on the field and keep this crowd. Like, if you make that first down, now all of a sudden the crowd is already at a fever pitch. It takes it to another level. But when you don't get it, and then Ole Miss, I mean, dude, they just jumped all over that opportunity. And then next drive, you're driving, you fumble the ball back to them. I mean, I don't know any crowd in the country, the way that game played out, that would have been able to stay a factor at that point. And add in the fact that, I mean, it wasn't really supposed to be, but anybody who sat in that stadium, it was hot out there too. It was a muggy day. It felt, I don't know what the temperature actually was, but it's
like 85.
It felt like 98, I feel like. Anybody who sat there can probably agree. So, yeah, man, I get it. I just, I feel for the fans. And I think that now, as we sort of, I would say, try to take the context of this game and move it forward a little bit, the question, and I feel like we've asked ourselves this each season, the question becomes, what is this team? Like you would say, there have been certain moments where the team has actually played really well. There's been certain moments where you look at LSU and you say, hey, there was the talent to compete, but some of these same issues, turnovers, penalties, obviously, those are some reoccurring themes, I think, cost you. But you're saying, the team that went out there and competed against LSU, you're saying, man, that team, if they clean a couple things up, can compete against anybody. The way they played on Saturday, you're going, they're going to struggle with anybody they play. And so the truth is somewhere, as it always is, in between. But obviously the schedule does not get any easier.
Well, and that's why, so what we've talked about with the parity in college ball, which as we sit here and watch a 3-2 Arkansas team beat an undefeated Tennessee team who was ranked number 4, right, and had been playing extremely well offensively, really in all phases, and they lost. And Bama, who just took Georgia to the woodshed for an entire half, more than a half, and then still ended up winning that game, just lost to Vanderbilt. An improved Vanderbilt team, but nonetheless not a team they should lose to, right? So I'm saying this not because you should feel better about the loss or that it was unacceptable or to make an excuse. You should be not happy about the game, not wanting to accept that as a result, right? But the reason that I think we're pointing out, hey, you don't really know what you're going to get, especially in this crazy college football season with so much parity, is because we have seen a lot of talk about absolutes after this game. Not going to win another game, right? Whereas a few weeks ago, it was playoff? Question mark? You know what I'm saying? And that was ridiculous too. You've got to, this is a week-to-week thing. And I think, look, we could sit up here and talk about it. It's the beauty of fandom. That's one of the great parts of it. You go up, you go down. There is a roller coaster. Part of that's fun, but it gets a little bit out of control sometimes. It goes off the rails just because you go so much off a week-to-week result. Tennessee just lost this game. They can still make the playoff, right? Bama can still make the playoff. South Carolina's still got a lot of goals in front of them. So you can recognize they've got to play, like you said, Wes, a lot. If they play like they did Saturday, they won't win many games. But what we saw Saturday is not yet a trend, right? Is that fair? I mean, it's not a trend that the team has played that way all year. Are there some things that are a trend? Yes, and those are the concerning things. Penalties, unforced errors, turning the football over, maybe not being too reliant on explosive plays, giving up explosive plays defensively. Those are the things that have hurt this team, win or loss, and so that's what you have to correct going forward, and you've got to correct those things going forward against a really difficult schedule. But what we saw Saturday in terms of result and full body of work, that's not what we've seen the whole season. So I don't think it's fair to say, I know South Carolina won't win another game. There's a lot we don't know about every team, I think.
Well, I mean, you can actually copy and paste a lot of the comments from after ODU to what you're seeing this week. Honestly,
100%,
like they're gonna win. How many people on social media, on our platforms, on podcast respond? Oh, this team's gonna win 2 games.
Tons.
And here's the thing: when you point out things that have happened in the past, well, that's not going to happen this time. And it's like, well, before it happened last time, you didn't think it was going to happen then either. Like, bring up the most obvious example, the most like stark contrast from week to week at Florida in 22, and then Tennessee game the next week. Oh, that's not happening this time. And then, the funniest one was after ODU. I don't even think I picked South Carolina to beat Kentucky. I didn't even pick South Carolina to beat Kentucky. And people were responding going, well, I don't think we can score as many points as you said. even picking against Carolina, I don't think we and then the best part is after Kentucky wins, oh, well, you didn't pick us. Now I know those are different people responding, and you have 2 camps, right? You have the people that are going to pounce when things are looking up, and then you have a different group of people that are going to pounce when things are looking down. And so right now, it's the things are looking down folks that get to have their miserable fun, I would call, like almost like just wallowing.
That is
they're just
good.
wallowing in the negativity, I think. But that's where we are, and obviously it's tough to get right against the team you have coming up. But I'll say this. Let me just call myself out on a take that was just, I'm sitting there like, what are you doing? But it just shows you how quickly things change. I'm sitting there watching the first half of Bama and Georgia, and I'm like, man, this Kane Womack guy, I'm like, I don't even know what some of these schemes are. Like, I love this stuff. Like, this guy's so aggressive. Like, this is amazing. This is so fun to watch. Like, look at this defense. Look how they just get after the quarterback, and they're doing all these different, I don't even know what you call it, schemes on the back end. This guy's incredible. Then you watch the second half. You're like, oh, Georgia kind of figured that out a little bit. And then you're like, wait, Vandy's going up and down the field?
Just up and down.
Do you want to know what they've surrendered since halftime of the Georgia game on defense, Alabama?
God. Is it an astronomical number?
784 yards and 66 points in the last 6 quarters.
Well, Kane Womack and the players are saying that they're turning things around this weekend.
It's because he wears
I don't know
that
if you've
visor.
seen that yet,
It's because he
Wes.
wears that visor, right?
How come Alabama gets to get mad about their loss, but South Carolina doesn't get any points for being
That's
mad
what
about
I've
theirs?
pointed out. That's what I pointed out. Like, but South Carolina should probably be mad too.
Yeah, I mean, I do get it.
Yeah, I totally get
but
it. Yeah,
it is funny. Hey, Bama's mad. What, is South Carolina happy?
We'll put the final touches on the Ole Miss game. Cole Kublik, as always, shares his thoughts on every SEC team coming away from the weekend. We'll see what he said about South Carolina. Reminder, the Loyalty Special Teams Touchdown Contest rolls over to another week. $600 up for grabs this weekend against Alabama. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win. The Gamecocks get that Special Teams touchdown. We'll announce a winner live on the air with Bill and Preston come Monday morning. And if no touchdown, it rolls over to $700 for the Oklahoma game coming up in 2 weeks. Is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on The Game.
All right, guys, you know it by now. Firehouse Subs, our presenting sponsor here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Head on over to firehousesubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app now. The beauty of it, right there on firehousesubs.com, you can do a pickup order with the Rapid Rescue to Go. Avoid the wait. Order online. You can actually even do a delivery order, or you can order your catering right there as well. Order now with the Rapid Rescue to Go. If you want to try something new, try this new Firehouse Captain's Club, featuring signature Captain Sorensen's hot sauce, their new Firehouse Hero sauce, along with savory oven-roasted chicken, melted pepper jack, crushed red pepper flakes, crispy smoky bacon, lettuce, tomato, and onions. Be sure to try the Captain's Club today at any one of the 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Like we always tell you, no matter where you are in the Midlands, there's a Firehouse Subs near and dear to you. Check them out right now, firehousesubs.com. Or, like we always say, hit the Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday. A reminder, as always, at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays, we have Shane Meaver's press conference where he'll give his final thoughts on what happened against Ole Miss and look ahead to Alabama this upcoming weekend. Cole Kubelik of the SEC Network and our sister station, Jocks FM, always gives his thoughts on all teams across the SEC at the conclusion of the weekend after he has a chance to go back and watch each and every game that gets played. And he shared his thoughts on South Carolina yesterday on Twitter. And a couple things that he noted here. He gives a lot of credit to Illinois Sailors for his effort, but noted that he does need a lot of help around him, and that, includes obviously at the receiver spot as well as pass protection, which once again was a struggle on Saturday with the 6 sacks allowed in the game against Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. We've already entered the, hey, blame the quarterback stage of things, which, that's what happens. I get it. That's sports. That's football. I mean, I think, are there some throws that Sellers is going to want back from that game, rewatching maybe a read or two, I think, as well. Absolutely. Now, to me, is that like the biggest issue South Carolina's facing right now? No, because guess what? You have a young guy, and you have a redshirt freshman who not only is taking over as a starter for the first time, but now missed pretty much the entire second half of the LSU game and the entire Akron game. And so to me, it looked like a guy who missed those reps, like would have loved to have that playing time. It's been very I feel like it's been very difficult to get to a point where Sellers can just go out there and just play and get comfortable, get locked in, get on the same page with his receivers, and just be the quarterback. And so I think for Carolina moving forward, all these reps are important. He's a guy who's going to learn as he goes. It's a little bit disheartening just to see some people kind of just say, "Oh, I'm out on this quarterback" as a redshirt freshman. I mean,
who's missed a game and a half?
Yeah, that's over the top to me, and I think he's super talented. I think he can make all the throws. Has he missed some throws? Of course. But, I go back, again, when to steal Chris's phrase, when your margin for error is so small, but I'm talking about it in a different context. If you're run, pass, run, or run, pass, and you don't get an explosive run in that sequence, then you're relying on that one pass within those 3 downs to be complete, or you're punting. And so look at the difference. Ole Miss, which, I think actually if you go back, threw the ball less than South Carolina did in this game overall. But while the game was still, what would you say, like in the balance, that was not the case. Like I know we had a caller yesterday who said Carolina threw the ball too much in the game. They didn't throw the ball hardly at all in the first, quarter and a half, it felt like. So Ole Miss, they threw the ball down the field. They missed a ton of throws down the field. Missed a bunch of them. Now, some of that was great coverage. Some of that was a bust, and they just missed it. But what they do, they kept firing. And so I think you get better as a quarterback. You get better as a passing game if you keep firing. You get better as a running game if they know that you'll throw the ball on first down. Not that not that they threw the ball or ran the ball every first down, but it was highly skewed towards the run early in this game. If anything, I think they need to throw the football more, because I think you will get more efficient at it as you go. And I think if you can show you can throw the ball a little bit, that will open up what has been at times a pretty good running game, but it'll make it more efficient.
So my question I agree with the premise. My follow-up question is something that I'd go back to that we've seen this season. Remember how we were talking yesterday about my perception that, the easy access throws haven't been there as much for South Carolina. Now, some of those
haven't been there as in they're not available, or they're not taking them, like they're not calling them.
Not available, not calling them. And then sometimes when you do actually have them, the best example from Saturday is the Jared Brown little mesh route, little jag route. That's wide open, you know, and he's probably running for a good while because Jared Brown can run past the sticks if he catches it and then is able to not stumble, right? So I think it's a combination of things. I think where my head goes with that is they haven't been maybe called enough. We could go back and say, well, they called that here and the defense is playing, you know, a defense where they're trying to take that away. I mean, the same things we're talking about defensive coordinators can look at, right? They know South Carolina wants to run the ball. They know they've got questions at receiver. They got a young quarterback. So obviously a obvious game plan for South Carolina is, well, let's try to run the ball because that's our strength, and let's try to give easy access throws. So defensively, teams aren't going to sit back and say, yeah, just throw it short, right? So I get the give and take of that. But schematically, I'm just asking the question of, if you are going to throw the ball more, and they must have more of a passing threat downfield and easy access throws, can you find some ways to do that? I don't know how. Not my job, fortunately. But, you know, I do think you got to do that.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the opponent, too. Like, different opponents are going to have different schematics, different personnel. I mean, I think you look back at what Ole Miss. Now did Ole Miss back off even more in the second half with a lead? Probably, possibly, but some of what South Carolina did in the second half, where they are taking, you know, and they do throw the little flat pass to the pass in the flat to you know, to the tight end quite a bit. Like that has been one area where they have sort of attacked the easy access throws. You would say attack the flats, attack the underneath. They called you know, the shallow cross quite a few times now. Several times it was like a mesh concept. They got called for the offensive pass interference. We saw them hit that once, though, for a first down. We saw them hit what should have been that for a first down late in the first half. Now, Ole Miss, I just feel like they attacked the underneath a little bit more consistently in the first half, and it was all to set up their double move stuff.
We'll take a look at what happened outside of the game on Saturday with the commitments from over the weekend, as there were quite a few for South Carolina that continue to add to the 2025 class, as well as take a look at some news that happened with the roster as well just this morning, too. A reminder, the game and community partners teaming up for Hurricane Helene relief efforts in Asheville, Greenville, and the Spartanburg, South Carolina areas. You can join us in supporting the families impacted by the recent disaster with our collection drive running today through Thursday. Please bring non-perishable items such as canned food, bottled water, diapers, wipes, pet food, toiletry, and feminine hygiene products to our locations this week, starting off today at Northside Baptist Church, currently going on up until 2 p.m., then from 4 until 6:30 as well at Northside Baptist on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. Tomorrow, 12 Springs Community Church on Sunset from 9 until 6, also in Lexington. Wednesday as well at Brooklyn Northeast Church on Summit Parkway in Columbia from 9 until 6, and then Thursday at Brooklyn Baptist Church from 9 until 6 on Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia. Terry will be out there today broadcasting live from Northside Baptist from 12 until 3 from the halftime show. Again, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on the game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends at Goal Line Framing, as we've been doing for months or years now. I mean, if you have a custom framing job you need, quit waiting, quit putting it off. Hit up our friends Kendall Walsh, Joni James, right now. Diplomas, original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Best of all, signed prints. Maybe you got an autographed print or poster that has just been sitting around or needs to be taken to the next level. You can go out there, and when we say custom framing, that literally means you can go in there, you can pick the exact frame that works for you, that you think is best. That can be a classic, timeless look, or that can be a modern or even just a wild look. Whatever you can come up with, They can walk you through it. 803-739-1337 is the phone number. They're open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and then Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon. Hit them up right now. Gold Line Framing, 803-739-1337 for all of your custom framing needs.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on this Tuesday. I've spent a lot of time talking about what happened on the field on Saturday. Haven't got a chance to get into what was good news from the weekend. That is a lot of good things on the recruiting front for South Carolina as they continue to build their 2025 class. Got a couple of very significant commitments coming in over the weekend. We're starting off with Jordan Gidron, the four-star wide receiver out of Ridgeview.
Yeah, right down the road, and you can see that I think this state of South Carolina classes for 2025 and 2026, I mean, there's some players in the state right now. And so for Carolina to prioritize these guys and land many of them, we'll see if they can land the rest of them that they've targeted there. I think you can kind of see the game plan in terms of trying to put that proverbial fence around the state. And Gidron, one of two local guys who have reclassified from 2026 to 2025. The other, of course, being Donovan Murph, big-time target for South Carolina from Irmo. But Gidron, talking about a guy with good size, track speed, won a couple state championships this past it was this year, but it would have been actually his sophomore year of school. I guess that would have been like April or May. 100, 200-meter champ in the state. He's been injured some this year, so hasn't been able to play quite as much, but he's a guy South Carolina has targeted, has a bunch of big offers. And I'm curious, Chris, what you think of this trend of reclassifying that it is not new. Like, certainly you look at Ryan Williams at Alabama, not the first to do it. Certainly it appears he won't be the last because we've seen lots of people do it after that. But I think his success and the fact that he's come such a big name right off the bat, combined with the NIL learning opportunities that going ahead and going to college provides now, leads me to believe we're going to see quite a bit of this moving forward.
It is a trend. It's not a trend. It's becoming a trend to accelerate development, right? So, the 2009 class, I think I said this the other day, but it's a good example to bring back up. You remember like Stephon Gilmore, Devontae Holloman, some of those guys enrolled early, and they ended up playing big roles as freshmen. But back then it was like, oh, man, this guy's getting in early. Like that's really going to help him, and it certainly does. I don't want to say it was rare back then, but it was not as common as it is now. Oftentimes now, if you look at a school's high school class, you say, well, 75% of those guys are enrolling early. South Carolina's 2024 class that's here now, when you look at high school plus portal guys, there were only, 4 guys out of that entire class, 30-something players that didn't enroll early. A lot of times your transfers are going to be mid-year most of the time, and then your high school guys, a large chunk of those are going to be mid-year guys as well. So now it's spilled over into high school. Now it's, hey, I'm going to go ahead and, reclassify. We saw an Auburn commitment did it the other day. So it's not going to become, I don't know if we'll say common, but we're going to see it, I think, more and more because of all the advantages.
Yeah, and so enroll early used to just mean in January. Now enroll early means
you're a year.
You're leaving an entire year, or in some cases maybe a year and a half before what you were. Now I do wonder, are some of these guys nationally like already old for their grade as well? Like I think that factors in as well. It's interesting. It used to be the trend was the sort of JV redshirt where a guy in high school would stay behind a grade so that they would be older in high school so that they would have a better chance of success. Now we're seeing, well, no, I actually want to just jump the line and get to college earlier than everybody else and go ahead and get started. Now, I do think something to watch here. If you're one of these guys, Ryan Williams, this guy is incredible. So not everybody can just show up a year early and have success. It's hard enough if you're a freshman trying to make an impact, period. But now you're a year younger than you would have been. Like I think it has to be done with development in mind and with the fact of, hey, I'm getting myself ready to maybe make a greater impact when I'm a sophomore than I would have as what would have been my freshman year, because I've already got a year under my belt. I've got a year in a nutrition program and a SEC strength and conditioning program, all those things, as opposed to just expecting to come in and start as someone who should be a senior in high school. Like I think the expectations have to be properly managed. But for South Carolina, going back to the main topic here, it was a great weekend on the recruiting trail, and it really just, I think, underlines again how disappointed fans were with the result on the field, because you're looking at it, you're going, hey, Gidron just committed. You go into Saturday, and it was like it was set up for, success for the whole weekend, where you have Malik Clark commit, Jamel House all commit. Right before the game is about to kick off, and, there's news for another commitment out there possibly. So it's like, to me, it's just kind of a missed opportunity. Even if you had lost the game, but you just played very, very well, that would maybe be one thing. But it just the game on the field put a huge damper on the weekend of really a weekend of recruiting momentum that you could see building.
Yeah, I think, and you brought this up during the break, Wes. I mean, we don't know how many more guys could fall into this category of, that Carolina's recruiting for the future, like a Gidron, right, that might go ahead and jump up early. I think certainly South Carolina is looking at the possibility of a guy like Gidron being able to, and Donovan Murph has obviously reclassified, and they've got a good shot at him. Could there be others? Maybe. I think it's a great point you made that a lot of times it's maybe not about getting ready for year one, but about accelerating for year two. That said, there are some guys that could factor in early. You look at the receiver room. That's one that still has some questions. Is probably going to carry some questions into next year as well. The portal will be part of that strategy, but so will, some newcomers and some guys that are going to be returning to this roster. The point you made, that I was going to bring up, Carolina has lots of seniors. I mean, particularly on defense, right? And so they're going to need some players when you're looking ahead. This is obviously getting way ahead, but looking at 2025, they are going to be potentially young at some spots. Depends on how what do you get from the portal? We have no idea. It doesn't open until December. That's going to be critical at certain spots, but you look at linebacker, you look at defensive tackle, you look at, secondary, a lot of seniors on this team. So you're going to need some guys, and this isn't just about high school guys reclassifying. It's just a general point. You're going to have to find some guys that can come in and play for you quickly.
Again, you had the commitments of Jordan Gidron as well as Malik Clark, and then the 2026 class you had Jamal Howes as well, the tight end from just up the road in Newberry, adding on to that class, and again continuing to build on 2025 class, which we talked about the other day. Is the ratings have kind of dipped as of late with not getting as many commitments, but jumped back into the top 25 nationally with the commitments of Clark and Gidron from over the weekend.
Yeah, I think getting back into the top 25 is always where you want to be. And I do think you can look at that thing and be like, man, there's another 8, 9, 10 SEC schools ahead of you on this thing. But if you can consistently stack those top 25 classes and then develop and then do well in the portal, you can put together a team that can compete. And because you are really talking about splitting hairs at that point, like is the number 23 class that much different than the 26th class or the 19th class? Probably not. At that point, it's about development, evaluation, and who you can tack on with the portal. And obviously, in today's world, it's about roster retention as well. Can you keep these guys on your roster, keep them within your program and developing and being a part of what you want to be as far as your plan goes? So, yeah, certainly always good to be in that top 25, though.
Come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We do have a self shirt on South Carolina. We'll hit that coming up next here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. You know, these past couple weeks, we've talked a lot about what we've called self-shirting with guys that are electing to redshirt themselves and seek opportunities in the transfer portal in the middle of the season or when the transfer portal does open a little bit later on in the year. And South Carolina has its first official redshirt, self-shirt of this year with Bengali Kamara saying that he plans to sit out the remainder of the year and enter the transfer portal when it does open up in December.
Yeah, so South Carolina now, I guess this is the first time they've had to deal with this trend. Did it happen in the past at all? Well,
would you consider McLeod?
Yes, I think you have to. I think you have to.
Now, he was dismissed from the team, but he had intentions of doing this.
Yeah, allegedly. Yeah, he did. But I think this is the first time this year. We'll say it like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is where we are, right? Now, I'll say this. A couple of the little reactions. Oh, here we go. It starts.
Yeah.
No, it's an isolated situation. And for one, most of the guys that are like playing a lot have played in 5 games now. He had only played in 4 because he missed a game.
Yes. So let's set the facts, okay? So that people don't go, they lost to Ole Miss, doesn't believe in the coaching staff anymore, that type of thing, which you see. So here's some facts about the situation. Normally when we talk about a self-shirt, it is, I'm going to preserve my red shirt so that I can go in the portal. But not always. The Bear Alexander situation at Southern Cal, allegedly, he said, I'm on a red shirt so I can come back. I'm not happy with my role. I want to play more, etc. Kamara, from what I've been told, reliably, was not a situation initially where it was, I want a red shirt and transfer. Okay, because when this first started hearing about this, it seems like that's a little weird, right? Kamara's played in 4 games. He missed a game because of an injury. He played 30 snaps, which was his season high at Ole Miss, right? I remember we had him on the radio a while back, and he said, hey, coming into this year, I think it's awesome. We have a lot of depth. We don't have to play a lot. When I've looked back in my career, being able to play less snaps, you're actually more effective. So I don't know the reasons, but the reason, his reasons for wanting to redshirt this year, maybe it was to play a bigger role. That's entirely possible. I don't know that for sure. But
I've heard that, by the way, that he wanted to be a true starter.
Okay, so there you go.
I put that as I've heard that. Like he didn't tell me that. That's
right.
Not like a stone cold
It
answer,
makes sense, but makes
that's
sense.
That's what I've heard. That he was a rotational guy and wanted to be, hey, you're a starter.
And you look at next year, to the point we were talking about last segment, you're going to lose D-Knight, Debo, Bam. So the door is open, right, for you to come in. But here's the other part of it. You have depth at linebacker. If you're South Carolina, if you're Shane Beamer, Kamara just played 30 snaps for you. He is playing for you. You would like to have him this year. So when a guy comes in and says, hey, I'm going to shut down the rest of the year and redshirt, if you're Shane Beamer, if you go, all right, some people say, I get, we need him next year. Yes, that's true. But what type of precedent are you setting, if you say yes to that?
Yeah, I think it'd be a bad look, honestly.
Yeah.
Because and if he did redshirt and stick around, he probably is starting next year. But also, the other part of this, Chris, we've seen guys, the NC State quarterback, for example, we've seen guys say, "Oh no, I'm going to sit around, redshirt. Nah, coach, I'll be back next year."
Juice Wells, I'm coming back.
And then hit the transfer portal anyway. So
yep.
I think you have to. The moral of the story is you were told the situation when you got here. Like, you were told the situation when you were convinced to transfer here, and you're playing a role. You played 30 snaps against Ole Miss. You're part of the linebacker rotation. At some point, there does have to be some element of this is your role on this team. Go play it. That's what you signed up for. That's what you have an NIL deal for. Like, Yeah, everybody, like, what's that thing? The team. Like, everybody wants to be a little bit more involved in everything they do in life. Everybody wants to make a little bit more money. Everybody wants a bigger role. At some point, though, it does have to be about the team. It's not like you were buried on the bench. It's not like you got lied to. Like, you were playing. At some point, there has to be a little give and take from, hey, it's a loaded room. You're part of the rotation. That doesn't mean you're going to go play 90% of the snaps. And guess what? That's not necessarily a bad thing to be a rotational guy as opposed to getting hit in an SEC box, being an in-the-box player is what I'm trying to say. D-line linebacker. It's not that bad, especially you've had an injury. So, I don't know. Ultimately, it is his decision, but if I'm an NFL decision maker, putting a little note in that evaluation. Little note.
Yeah.
And again, that is Bengali Kamara redshirting for the rest of the year, and we'll plan to enter the transfer portal when that does open coming up in December. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs Halftime Show. Myself and Terry Ford, who is live out at Northside Baptist Church on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington for the Hurricane Helene Relief Effort Collection going until 3 here on the game.